What's up, amigos? 7 days and we can finally get in the sanctuary and sink our lives into it. But until then, let's go over some more theory crafted endgame builds. Today we have the infamous spin to win Whirlwind Barbarian. As always, if you guys are interested in more Diablo 4 content, hit that button, that like button, and subscribe, and thank you all so much for the support over the last few videos. So first of all, Barbs are the only class in the game that get this really nifty Berserking buff. Berserking grants the user 25% increased damage and 30% movement speed. Now, Whirlwind is one of those builds that on paper seem great, and in previous games, it is also great. But this build definitely scales out of this world with the right aspects. Now, I might eat my words here, who knows, but during the last test, it was great when you got the aspects, but awful before. Now, this was only to level 25. Now, I also need to tell everyone I advise against leveling with Whirlwind based off of the information from the previous test, because Whirlwind was painful. You rage starve yourself, you constantly ask yourself if you're doing any damage, just don't do it. Maybe you can respec after level 20 to 25 to Whirlwind, but in the beta test, again, it was excruciating to level with. If you do decide to ignore this warning, you are an absolute boss. I know I will be going to try it and go through the pain just to see if it has gotten any better, but now that I made everyone extremely mad, let's go ahead and get into the... Alright, so before we get into the build, let's go over the pros and cons actually. So we have insane damage, both AoE and single target mid to late game. We have great movement speed between lunging strike and flat movement speed from Berserk. Overall, great mobility. We have a few defensive layers to make mid and end game transition smooth. And we also have an absolute amazing keystone passive. The skill flexibility is also there between the War Cry and Iron Skin choice, and a few passives that you can alternate as well. In my opinion, min-maxing is going to be really fun on the Whirlwind Barb, but it's going to be tedious for some. And the last pro is the build really is just beginner friendly. The concept of the build. Min-maxing, again, it's not for everybody, it's not casual friendly, but I try to help that in my written guide. Now for the cons, it's definitely not a starter build in my opinion. I may be eating my words here, but Whirlwind feels awful leveling with, at least it did in the beta test, so if you want to try it, go for it. I'm not telling you not to do it, I'm just suggesting. It's going to be hard to get off the ground, I think, also because the build is very, very reliant on gear. Not only is it reliant on great weapons, but it's going to be reliant on aspects as well. Spin to win can also get boring very, very fast. So if you're the type of person who doesn't like doing the same thing over and over again, hours upon hours, this may not be the build for you. And on the same topic, it's melee. So if you're not too fond of melee, if you aren't a melee player in Diablo 4, if you think it's a little too tedious, again, may not be the build for you. And to finish it off, of course, min-max. Like I just said in the pro section, it's going to be tedious for some. It's not for everybody. I do try to help everybody. In the written guide, I will have affixes to look for. Build. So, lunging strike. This is our basic skill of choice, and the biggest reason for this is because with combat lunging, we actually grant ourselves that berserking buff. So, this is the only basic skill that grants us berserking. Enhanced just gives us a 2% life leech when it damages a healthy enemy. Now remember, healthy means 80% or more HP. So Whirlwind, the biggest reason behind the build, this is everyone's favorite ability, straight spin to win. Enhanced Whirlwind grants us 1 Fury each time we deal direct damage to an enemy, 4 if it's against an elite. Violent Whirlwind gives us a 30% increased damage buff until cancelled when we spin for 2 seconds or more. We choose Rallying Cry here. Now, when we pop this, we increase our movement speed by 30%, and our resource generation increases by 40%. This is overall a great way to sustain our rage for whirlwinding. Enhanced Rallying Cry grants us Unstoppable for the duration, and Strategic Rallying Cry grants us a 10% base life as Fortified, in addition to 2% base life as Fortified each time we take or deal direct damage. Since we're constantly spinning in a channeled ability, we're always dealing direct damage, and we're always going to be taking direct damage. So we're always going to be stacking this Fortify up as long as Rallying Cry is active. So we actually take 2 defensives here. And this is actually something that you can remove if you want. Iron Skin, we gain a barrier that absorbs 50% of missing life for 5 seconds. Enhanced Iron Skin gives us a 10% extra barrier, total into 60%. And then we also take Strategic Iron Skin, just like Rallying Cry, which gives us more Fortify. In this case, 15%, but it doubles if we cast it while below 50% life. Now you can replace Iron Skin for something like Warcry, which increases our damage dealt for 6 seconds, into Enhanced Warcry. Enhanced Warcry grants us Berserking for 4 seconds. Again, since this is all theory crafted, I don't know how the Barb is going to play mid-game into the late 30s. We did get a buff for 10% damage reduction early on, but I don't know how well that's going to play out when we go into Act 2, Act 3. Berserking for 4 seconds may really help out the overall damage of the build and allowing us to level at a good pace, but who knows. And then you can actually take, including with the Berserking, if you only care about the Fortify and not the barrier, you also grant a Fortify chance, a 15% Fortify chance. So again, Warcry, Enhanced Warcry, Mighty Warcry, a great alternative instead of Iron Skin. So brawling, we absolutely are going to take Charge. Charge is a great way to engage into a mob or group of enemies, and when we pair it with Mighty Charge, it also gives us the chance to inflict vulnerable status for 2 seconds. The unique thing about Charge is that when we hit an enemy, it knocks them back. Well, Enhanced Charge, if we knock an enemy back into any terrain, we stun them for 3 seconds. Stunned enemies take more damage, and it's just a big damage window between being able to stun them and inflict vulnerable damage. Now our ultimate is Wrath of the Berserker. We become enraged, knocking enemies back, and gain Berserking for 5 seconds. For the next 10 seconds, anytime we deal direct damage with basic skills, it grants us Berserking for 5 more seconds. We already have Combat Lunging Strike from our basic attack, which gives us Berserking for 1.5 seconds, so we'll total this up to 6.5 seconds. Now again, Berserking grants us 25% increased damage and 30% movement speed. In addition, if that wasn't enough, Prime Wrath of the Berserker grants us an additional 20% movement speed and 30% fury generation. But that's not all. Supreme Wrath of the Berserker, while Wrath is active, every 50 fury we spend increases Berserk's damage by 25%, which means our Berserk goes up to 50% damage. Now we're going to pair this up with our Keystone passive, Unconstrained. Increase Berserk's maximum duration by 5 seconds and increase its damage bonus by 25%. Now I don't think I need to say more. With this Keystone passive, Berserk will grant us 50% increased damage, 30% movement speed, and we can stack Berserk for an extra 5 seconds. Now when we pair this up with Wrath of the Berserker for this duration, we get up to 75% increased Berserk damage. So now we're going to go ahead and go over the passives, and just like Druid, Barbs have a ton of good passives. So starting off in the core section, we go to Pressure Point. Lucky Hit Chance, your core skills have a 30% chance to make enemies vulnerable for 2 seconds. This means while we are whirlwinding, we can actually proc a vulnerability infliction and apply it mid-spin. Endless Fury. Basic skills generate 15% or more, or 15% more fury when using two-handed weapons. I definitely recommend always opt to use two-handed weapons when whirlwinding. So Imposing Presence, we gain 15% additional max life. This is actually pretty crazy when you think about it when it goes into mid to end game scaling. 15% max life is a lot. We have the Swiftness passive, which just increases our overall movement speed by 12%. We always are opting to gain more movement speed any chance that we can. When we're whirlwinding, we are going to be really fast, especially when we pop Wrath. and when we have our berserking buff, we are just going to be clearing nightmare dungeons like crazy. Next up, we have aggressive resistance. This gives us a 3% damage reduction while berserking. We have prolific fury. While berserking, fury generation is increased by an additional 18%. Battle fervor, when a brawling skill damages at least one enemy, gain berserking for 3 seconds. Now, charge is our brawling skill, which means we can stun, inflict vulnerability, and grant ourselves berserking for 3 seconds. We take pit fighter, dealing increased damage to close enemies and gain a damage reduction for distant enemies. We take slaying strike, which is 22.5% increased damage to injured enemies. Injured means 35% or less HP. No mercy, we have a 3% increased crit strike chance against CC'd enemies, specifically immobilized, stunned, or slowed. We take thick skin. Each time we take direct damage, we gain 1.1% base life as fortified. This seems minor, but it does add up. Please remember, we're always in the middle of big groups of enemies, so we're always going to be taking direct damage. We take counter offensive. While we have fortified for over 50% of our max life, you deal 12% increased damage. So this is why we take things like the strategic iron skin and rallying cry, why it's also a very good alternative if you do want to drop iron skin and take war cry, because we can still get fortified chance to keep this up and going on a rotation, similar to how we did it with the werebear on my pulverized video. And we take heavy handed. While using two-handed weapons, we deal 15% crit strike damage. And that's it for the Whirlwind Barb build. Now, I'll have a list of the aspects that you should be looking for in the written guide. I do think endgame, this build is going to be one of the strongest builds in the entire game, and it's going to be the best build to farm nightmare dungeons without a doubt. Between the speed and the amount of crit chance that you get from passives and from the aspects, Whirlwind really does scale out of this world. I want to put it up there with the landslide druid build. But I do think it's going to take a lot of min-maxing, and I do think it's going to take a lot of time. So if you watched here until the end, thank you all again for all the support. And until next time, amigos, take care.